Welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. My name is Melissa and I am a Janome educator for Janome Australia. At this afternoon session, we're going to work through the embroidery editing that you can do on screen of your embroidery machine. Now I'm going to work with the 15,000. A lot of the editing though can be done on all of our embroidery machines. So we'll change over to the screen of the machine. And when we turn our embroidery machine on, we will come up to this home screen. So we have the edit function, the monogram function, and our designs. So the first thing we're going to select is the edit. Oh, and here's my previous. Let me just clear this. There we go. So now we've got a blank screen. So from the edit, we're going to select our hoop. Now, all of our hoops are listed in the hoop icon. Now, your machine may not have this many hoops, but your machine will have the hoops that suit it available to you. So I'm going to select the SQ23 today. And I've now got a blank hoop area for me to do creating in. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in one design. So I'll select from the built-in memory. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to locate from my machine in my abstract designs, design number 24. So all of my designs are numbered and I'm going to select design number 24. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do with this design is I need to rotate it. So I'm going to select on my rotate icon just on this side. So I'll select my rotate and I'm going to rotate this 45 and then a further 1 or 2 degrees maybe. Oops, went too far. 1 or 2 more degrees. All right. And then I will okay that. Now I'm going to go and get a second design. So I go down to my little house, select on that, and go to my designs again. Now you could go to a USB stick and select from your USB if you like. You could go and collect it. If you have the computer connected, you could take your design from the computer and bring it across. So I'm going to go back to my designs, and this time I'm looking for my fringe designs. So a lot of the newer Janome machines will have fringe designs, and I'll explain a little bit more about the fringe designs as we work through. And I'm just going to select number 4. Oh, it's gone really funny now. Maybe that light needs to go back on. Okay, and I'm going to pop this little design just over in the corner here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and select a monogram. So I'm going to pick up my house again, and this time I'm going to go into my monogram. I want to select my font. So up in the top left-hand corner, we have the option to select from all of our fonts. Now, depending on your machine, you may have more or less available in this screen. So I would like to select my Gallant. Now, along the top of the screen here, we have a number of other functions that we can choose to do. So the first little icon to the next, the second little icon, I should say, sorry, is to run horizontally across your hoop or vertically down your hoop. So when you have a hoop that is longer and not as wide, you can run your names down the length of the hoop rather than across the width of the hoop. Or maybe you have a awkward to hoop item, maybe a large towel, and you want the excess to be out to the left of your machine, so you can run your design down the length of the hoop rather than across. We then have the ability to select from small, medium, or large. And the small, medium, or large is 10 mil, 20 mil, or 30 mil in height. We have uppercase and lowercase, so we can change between uppercase and lowercase. So I'm going to turn on my uppercase to begin with. And then we have the rubbish bin and to save. So I'm now going to type in a word, and I'm going to start with a capital letter, and then I'm going to reduce to a smaller case. Now, with everything that I'm doing today, there are notes available that you can collect from your local retailer. So wherever you received your invite for today's event, if you contact them, they will be able to forward these through to you. And this will step through all of these steps. So don't worry if you're scribing really quickly. You don't need to do. We can organize the notes for you. Or we have organized the notes for you. So now I've got my dream on the screen there, and all of the designs will automatically come straight into the middle of the hoop. We can use a couple of different methods to move this around the screen. So you will have some sort of an arrow toggle that you can move your design around screen, or you can also click and drag. All right. Now, the other thing, as your designs are selected, they will have a little green box around the outside of them. So I can currently tell my dream is selected, whereas my other two don't have boxes around them, so they're not yet selected. Okay, so while I've got my dream selected, I'm actually going to do a couple of functions to this to arc it around the oval of that design. So at the very bottom of my screen, I have this option to arc. So the ABC on a circle, and I can arc up or I can arc down. I can then spread it apart or I can bring it back together. So for this one, I'm going to arc it up and I'm going to go OK. Now it's sitting up away from my circle. So I now need to rotate my design. So I'm going to rotate and I'm going to take it back a couple of degrees, just single. So I rotated clockwise 45 and I've now taken it back in single degrees to 39. Might go a couple more. Then I'm going to OK. And this time I'm just going to move the design down with my directional arrows until it's roughly where I would like it to be. If I felt that I needed it to arc a little bit more, I could come back into my arc and press one more. I'm going to take it back because I do like it better a bit like that. So now that I've got that in place, I now would like to put more of these fringe flowers around my design. So I have a couple of different ways that I can do this. I would like to fill my hoop with a number more of these. So for this one, I'm going to scroll through and select my cornering tool. So my cornering tool looks like these 4 little hearts, and it's automatically going to copy and paste these into the 4 quadrants of my hooping. So each of the hoop has 1/4 here, 1/4 there, 1/4 over here, and 1/4 down here. So wherever I place this design, it's then going to copy the design into each of the quarters at that same spot. So I'll pop it just down here a little bit, and I'm going to select that. And now it's popped 4 of them in there straight away for me. I'm just going to slide these around now until I'm happy with somewhere where they might be. Okay, and I'm going to pop one in the center of here. Now I'm going to use, now that I've roughly got it in position there, I'm going to use this toggle dial down the bottom to really make sure that I've centered it within that center. Now these designs do look a little fuller on screen, but they are a softer design once we stitch them. Okay. Now you do have another option you can do with your, if you just want a single, you don't necessarily want 4. I now only want 1 more. So I've just selected this one at the bottom, for example, and I have the option to copy that design. So I've selected this design, and on the side of my screen here, I have a copy. So I'm going to select that. Now the copy will automatically copy directly on top of my previous design. So I've selected that icon, and when I click and drag, there's my second design. Okay, if I've accidentally copied a design that I didn't actually want, the next one below it is the rubbish bin. So it deletes that one. All right. Now the other 2 icons you can see at the bottom of here are your mirror imaging. So we can mirror image horizontally and vertically. So the easiest one I'm going to show you with is this dream. If I select for my dream to spin, I can then select a second time and it's now completely upside down. So if there was something that I needed to hoop in a different angle, so therefore my words or my design needed to be reversed to the opposite direction, rather than sitting and rotating the whole way around, you can just do 2 clicks on your mirroring and that will bring you back to where you need to be. Okay, we will scroll down because now I'm just moving, I've moved that one out of the line that I had. That looks good. Now let me go back one, sorry, I went one too early. So the next thing that I would like to do is resize some of these little fringe flowers. So with your resize, you can increase the size or decrease the size up or down by 20%. So you can take it down to 80% of its original size or increase it up to 120% of its original size. So this little one up here, I'm just going to drag that one over here, for example, and I'm going to reduce its size down. So we'll take that one down to 80. And I'm going to OK. And then this one here, I'm going to take this one up to 120. So we will open up our resize again and increase to 120. Now I'm just holding on the plus. If you wanted to do individual degrees because you're trying to fit it to somewhere, you can individually press these icons. Okay, so this is not increasing the stitch count. This is just stretching your stitch. So sometimes if you have a run line design that you maybe want to use for quilting, this is a great way to increase its size so that you can go through the thicknesses of your quilt. So your wadding, backing and quilt top. If you've increased the stitch length, then you're going to end up with your quilting not looking really tiny. Okay. Now this last one, I'm going to take this to 90. That looks good.
Just a question.
Yes.
Are there limits to how big and small you can take those?
These will only go, so all of your designs, doesn't matter whether they're fringe flowers or anything like that, they will only go to 120% as the maximum of its original size or down to 80% from its original size. Okay, so you can go up or down the 20%, that is all. Okay, if you wanted to do more or less, then you would be best to look at purchasing Digitizer and doing that on your PC, which the Digitizer now you can do on Mac or Windows PC. So we're going to scroll down, and the next thing I would like to do is change some of the colors that this design is showing me. So I don't necessarily like the colors that this design has come in, and I would like to, before I stitch it out, have a bit of a look at some different color options. So this little icon that looks like a rainbow, this allows you to select and pick up any colors you would like. So I'll just go backwards, sorry. So I have selected a design. Okay, I can select any one of my designs. So there I've selected the word, for example. I'll select my color icon again, and it's showing me the word. Now the word only has one color, so it's just showing up the color right here. And it's telling me currently it wants to use the Janome polyester number 2, which is the black. But I would like to do a different color for this one. So I'm going to select my orange shade here. And along this bar here, you can see a different gradual color. So I'm going to take it towards the white so that I get a bit more of a peachy kind of color. All right. So somewhere about there. And I know that in my threads that I'm about to use, I can see that this color I would like to use is 2, 3, 4. So I am going to select 2, 3, and 4. And that's the color that I'm about to use. This right here. It's got 2, 3, 4 on the end of it. So I select OK. So I just pressed on that pencil to change my name. And then I'll go OK. Now you can see the dream has changed color. Now I would like to do that on another design. So we'll select this little one at the top and we'll change the color. Now this one you can see has 1/2 and there's some little toggles right here. So it has 2 colors to the design. So I'm going to change my first one into a purpley kind of color. And this one I'm going to call 242. And okay. So as I actually embroider these, this is going to give me my exact colors that I have picked right now. So the center of this one, I would like to do a pale purple. So I'm going to bring my slider right down. And you don't necessarily have to change to exactly the same shades as your thread. You're just playing around at this point to work out if you like the color combinations. So we select our little pen again, and this one I would like to do is 209. And okay. So now I've made the changes to the 2 colors in this design. So I will click OK. So now you can see on screen, I have got my little flower changed to 2 shades of purple, and my word is now a shade of orange. So I could go through and change all of these to different colors if I would like. Yes, Peter.
We have a question.
Yes.
About changing colours. In the lettering, can you change individual letter colours? So you could have D as one colour, R as...
So the only way that you could, so the question that we just had was, can we change each of the letters in lettering on the machine? The only way that we would be able to do that on screen is to bring each letter in individually. If you wanted to have a word that was a rainbow of colours, either bringing the individual letters in on the machine would be the option, and then change out each colour or each letter to a different colour. Or the other option would be, again, the digitizer. So in digitizer, yes, you can type in a name and then break it apart and turn each color, each letter into a different color. Okay. So the other thing that I would like to show you, this little flower and the fringe flower that's in the center of here, I assume I've sat it into the center, but I would like to double check. So we can actually zoom right in on that particular design and make sure that I have it nice and centered. So this little plus magnifier down the bottom corner here, I'm going to select this one. Now don't panic if your icons aren't in the same locations as mine. Some machines, the icons might show along the bottom, some of them might show along the side. It all depends on the screen that you have on your model as to where your icons will place, and that's so that you get the best editing area as well. So the standard is this far left, then we have a mid zoom, and then we have an extreme zoom. So I'm going to extremely zoom in. So now you can see really close where exactly I'm at. And this little design looks a little bit more like it's toward the left and toward the bottom than exactly central. So I'm going to select this design. Select that little one, and I'm just going to use these arrows and make sure that I get it nice and centered. Okay, so once I'm happy with exactly where that's centered, I can use this little icon here that picks up my work and slides my whole work across. So I can do the same with this dream. So I'll drop my work in that position. I'll select this dream, and I will work out whether this is roughly the right size of what I would like. Now you can also see a lot better the grid lines in the background. These grid lines are the exact same grid lines as the plastic template that comes with your hoop. So if you have, say, a stripe on your fabric, or you are trying to line up with an area on your fabric, you can look at your grid line on your hoop with your fabric. Then you can look at the machine's edit screen and work out that you're roughly 1/3 of a square up. So then when you're stitching, it's going to be roughly 1/3 of a square up. Okay. Then when you're ready to go back to a standard screen, we just select our standard. And there we go. We're back to a normal screen again for us. Now, the other ones we have on the screen here is this one will sew completely everything in one color. So if I didn't want to change any colored threads, which we're not going to do today, but sometimes you might have a design that needs 3 or 4 colors, but you actually want to stitch it in one single color, this little icon will do just one color, start to finish, and doesn't stop for you. Unless, of course, your bobbin runs out or you have a thread break, then your machine will stop. But other than that, it doesn't stop for you. Now, we also have 3 other icons on here that we haven't yet gone through. So we have, 4, sorry. We have to group our whole design together. We have to color sort. We have to save. And our sewing order. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do now, before we go any further, we're going to sort this design. So by sorting the design, because we've brought the designs in, as you bring the designs in, the first design to come in will be the first design you stitch out. The second design you bring in will be the second. The third you bring in will be the third, and so forth. So say you bring in something such as a label, and you forget to bring in your date, and your date is now going to be the third line. You want to embroider that out in a formation. You don't want to go all over the place and be backwards and forwards. So your sew out order will allow you to reorder where everything is. So I can't remember which way I brought my flowers or my lettering in, but I know I want my flowers to stitch out last. So I'm going to stitch out my background design first. So I'm going to touch that first. Then I'm going to stitch out my dream second. Then I'm going to stitch out the center flower, then the top flower, then the flower on this side, and then the flower on this side. Okay. Once I've then selected everything in the order I would like to sew it out, I then turn off my sew out. Now, a lot of these functions as well that we're doing right here, you can do on the editing software on your PC as well, but it's all right here. So it's not necessary to have to go back to your computer every time. Okay. The next one we now want to do, we want to make sure that our whole design is central to the hoop. So I'm going to select on this icon at the very top, and I want to select all of my design. So on the left here, I have to be able to work through my design, just selecting one at a time. So if you have something that overlaps a lot and you can't get to particular designs, you can pick up one instead of the whole lot. This one, I want to select all my designs. So I'm going to select the little icon on the right, and you might just be able to see everything then gets little green lines around them. So I'm going to confirm that for the moment.
You might be able to turn your screen contrast down a little bit.
You want me to adjust?
Yep, and they might be able to see that.
I'm just going to adjust my screen contrast and see if we can see. Is that a bit better? Yeah?
Short of changing the background color.
So now we have one large green instead of each individual green. All of my parts are still individual, but for the minute it's one large, and you can see all of my icons down the side have disappeared. I'm only now left with my grouping, my copy, my delete, and my magnify, the zoom. Now this little icon here is my central. So if I select this, it automatically popped that design over to the center. So I'll just drag that off so you can see that a second time. This little icon here drops it back into center, where the arrows, so if I wanted to move it a fraction toward the left, I can do that. I can also drag, but if I want it central, I select just the center and it drops straight back into my center. So now I know that my design that I've created here will be exactly center on my hoop, so that I can sew out if I've marked out my fabric or anything like that. I know I'm going to be in the right position. All right. So now we will remove the selection of this, and I get all of my options back again. Okay. Now I am just going to, I'm a bit like a cooking show. I have changed, I've pre-sewn something out so that we don't need to bore you with just some embroidery. So I'm left with sewing just 2 little things out here. Now, before we go any further, I am going to save the design, and then I'm going to show you a cool little feature that will sew out everything at once in the same design and color. So the first thing we're going to save. So this little file here that looks like the arrow is going in, it's the opposite to bringing a design out of a folder. So this one will open a design. This one saves the design. So you can save the designs through the edit. So we're going to select on our folder. And on this particular machine, I have the option of saving to my built-in memory, saving to a USB, either 1 or 2. So I can plug 2 USBs into this one. So there's my USB.
Did you put your USB somewhere?
I moved my USB earlier. So I'm going to select my USB stick. Now it's opened my USB stick and it's confirmed. I've got a little black background on my USB and I've got my EMBF folder. So I'm going to open this one out. And then at the top here, I've got the ability to rename. So I'm going to select this and rename my design to something that I would recognize. If I had just saved it as the M001, which is a default, it will then maybe not reference to me later on when I go to stitch it out. And if I save M001, then the next time I save, it'll just do a 2 and a 3 and a 4. And then I'll just have a lot of designs that I'm not 100% what they are. So I like to rename them to something that I would recognize. So this one, I am going to rename to Dream. And then I'm going to OK. Now that's only confirming renaming the design. Now I am going to save and confirm that I want to save this to that USB. So I'm going to select OK. And now that I'm back to the edit screen, I've saved that design. All right. Now the last feature I want to show you here is to group these designs together. So this little icon that looks like a red, a blue, and then it's red and blue, it's going to group together the designs that have the same colors. So you can see it has 5, 1 of 5 down here. So I can't group anything else together here because that's all one design. Then I've got my word just as on its own as one design. Then I've got my first little flower as one, my second little flower as one, but it's grouped these 2 flowers together and it will stitch out the darker blue outside at the same time and then the lighter blue inside at the same time. Okay, so it has not stitched these 2 flowers, even though they are the same flower, it hasn't stitched these 2 because it can recognize we have changed the color. If I hadn't have changed the color, all 4 of these would have sewn out at once. So it means that you minimize the amount of thread changing you're making and the machine will be able to sew a little bit more consistent without color changes. Okay, at this point though, I need to confirm that that's what I would like to do. Now I'm across to the sew out. So I'm going to select OK. And I'm going to select OK to my hoop. So I've got an SQ23 hoop on my machine. And for the minute, I'm going to change my camera and change over to show you, here's what I've prepared earlier. So I've got our design, I've got the word, and I've got the first 2 flowers. So these little flowers are fringe flowers, and I'm going to sew out the other 2 fringe flowers for you to see. And when I sew these 2 fringe flowers out, I'll then take it out of the hoop and show you how easily you can create these little fringe flowers. Okay, so I'm going to start to work through. I'll change back to my screen. So because I've already started sewing, it now wants to start at number 1. Okay, I can see a fair bit of information on my screen right in front of me here. So if I start at my top corner, if I'm not 100% sure where my number 1 is, I can select on my screen this little icon and it grays out or puts in the background all the other colors and just shows me what my color is that I'm about to stitch. Okay, my next one gives me all of the threads that I need to use, even the ones that I have recolored. So I've recolored these little ones down here. The ones I didn't give names to, they've left blank, but they've shown me the color. And then the ones I've rechanged further down as well. Then I can also see how many stitches are in each one of those colors. So I can see that the color at number 5, which is a white or looking white thread here, that one is the one that I need the most of. So if I want my particular design to be a lot more peach colored than the rest, then I know that I should put my peach in at that point. Okay. My next icon along gives me the ability to trace around my area. So if I am putting this design above a pocket, or maybe it's on the front of an apron, I can work around with this little icon here and make sure that my design is going to sit in the parameters it needs to not embroider off the edge or not embroider over a pocket or anything like that. So I've got the option to go around. These ones will also take me to the extreme points of my hoop. So if I need to move out to double check that I've put in a piece of fabric for applique correctly or anything like that, I can select these 4 and my hoop will move to wherever that red marking is. My needle will move to that point. Then I have my basting options as well. So this is just a single baste, a double baste, or a positionable. So you can actually position in place where you want your basting line to be. We then have our next one, our adjusting. So on our adjusting, we can adjust the tension just for this design. So you have got an adjustment for tension in the set menus of your screens, but this one is just for this design. We can alter the tension. That's just going to go into this one design. We can adjust our trim and we can adjust the foot height. So if we're doing something with thickness, we might be doing some quilting or something like that. That's where we can adjust the foot height here. Okay. Then we have to bring our embroidery hoop into its home position. We have what foot we're working with. So some of the newer machines give you the ability to do couching in the embroidery. So you can adjust to couching foot number 1 or couching foot number 2, which is a slightly larger and smaller hole. So you've got a 2.5 hole and a 3 hole, and you are suggested to reset your machine back to 500 stitches per minute for couching. Okay, and I'll go through speed in a little bit. So I'm leaving my P foot on, so I've got my P foot selected. Then my last one here is my fine adjustment. So in here, if I knew that I needed to get this design into an exact position, I can come in and adjust in 0.1 degree and 0.1 millimeter adjustments within my area. Okay, so a lot more accuracy than once I get to the embroidery section. Now working our way down the screen, again, yours might be in a slightly different location, but a lot of our machines have all of this information on screen in the ready to sew. So we have the hoop we need to use, the foot we need to use, the exact size of my design. So I can see that my design top to bottom is going to be 151 millimeters and 173 tall, and then 173 wide. Now these can be changed from millimeters to inches in your set menu. It'll automatically come in as millimeters because your hoop template is in millimeters, but you can set it to inches and then you could make your own template with the inch graph template paper or plastic. We've got 14 colors total in this design. Our tension is on auto. We do have our automatic thread cutter turned on, so it's telling me that I've got it turned on. I've got my machine speed set at 500 stitches per minute, and I could increase that. So this machine will sew up to 1,000 stitches per minute or as sew as 400 stitches per minute. I personally like to sew at about the 5 to 600. I don't usually sew too much faster than that or embroider too much faster than that. And then right below it there, it's giving me my time. Okay. Now this little one on the side that looks like a calculator with a needle and a flower, this one is giving me the ability to type in a particular stitch number. So I have, just getting the stitch number that I was at. So I have sewn up to 12,645 stitches so far. So I'm going to type into here that exact stitch number. My machine does have the ability to resume. So if I did lose power as I was sewing, when I turn back on, if I have turned my resume on in the set menu, it will resume back to where it was turned off. So if you've gone to a class or you lose power at home and at a class someone accidentally unplugs you instead of someone else or their own, you can have your resume. So when you turn it back on, it brings you back to that position. However, in this case, I wasn't resuming, I was starting over, but I want to go back to a particular point. So I'm going to type in my stitch number of 12,645. Oops. Okay, so I'm at 12,645. That was my last stitch. So I'm going to OK, and that was the last stitch that was in my little flower. So I'm going to advance on 1 so that now I'm down to sew out these last 2 little flowers. Okay, the other alternate that I could have had, if I just go back here, I could have sat and scrolled through every color, but you do have to wait for your hoop. I'll just flick you over to see. Every time I'm pressing that button, you do have to wait for your hoop to move. Okay. So whereas if I select that calculator, and I should know this number off by heart very soon, 645, whoop, it's taking me straight to that stitch. So it's a lot faster. Okay, I'm now ready to sew this out. So I'm going to stitch this out on the machine. So I have threaded my machine with embroidery thread in the top, bobbin fill in the bottom, and I'm using a blue tip needle. So the blue tip needle's a size 11. I already have my cutaway stabilizer on the back of my fabric, and I have got an extra piece of tearaway floated into there because it is a lighter weight fabric that I'm working with, and these little fringe flowers can be a little bit dense. So I'm going to select my start, and this is going to sew out for me. Let me just stop and see if I can switch off my light in there. How's that? We've got a slight shadow, but that's okay. So you can see down here, my machine is doing quite a large zigzag. Now what we're creating are these little tiny flowers that then become 3D. Okay, so you have a couple of different versions. We're stitching out just this version where you have one colored thread, but some of the machines will have this version, as well as if you contact your local retailer or if you signed up with your local retailer that you were going to attend the event, this little project is downloadable and you will get these embroidery designs. So you can practice it on your machine. So once these stitch out, they don't become 3D until we adjust them. Okay, so you can see on here, this is one that we stitched earlier. We have a different colored embroidery to what we have on screen and what we've stitched out. We have positioned these little flowers and resized them. We have a slightly larger word and we've arced around. All of that is done on the screen of the machine. So we didn't have to go anywhere else. We could have as well on the Wi-Fi machines, you could have done this with the app on your iPad. So the all of these functions could have been completed with the app. I'll grab another little sample while we're going. So that's another version of what we're working through. You can see there, and we've popped little buttons into, if I hold it straight, we've popped some buttons into here as well with the button sewing foot. A couple of options for the cornering tool. So this one here is just one design, but very easily we've popped it into 1/4, press the cornering tool and it's dropped it around to the 4 different points, as well as this little version. So the exact same, except we put into this a different design. So this triangular design was in 1/4 of, and then copied it around to the 4. And the other thing that you can do with your editing is you can bring in, so this is a printed piece of fabric that we have as a background, and we've popped the embroidery designs on top of the printed piece of fabric into the background of our machine, positioned our little spaceships and rockets to where we would like them to be, and then hooped our printable fabric and stitched it out. Okay, and then we've just turned that into a little cushion. Oh, I was off screen when I said that. It's into a little cushion. Okay, so you have all of those options to do with your embroidery edit as well. Now our little fringe flower is just finishing to stitch out the outers. So I'm going to change over and pop in the color. Where's my scissors? I'm going to pop in the color for the centers. And let's do this in green. So I'm just popping my thread in using my needle threader. So I'll lock my machine, press my needle threader, threaded, and start stitching. So this one will finish on my screen here. It's telling me I just have 2 minutes left, and you can see the pale blue color that's showing. That's all that we're left to have to sew. So once it sews out the centers, we're ready to go. Now the centers on a fringe design, or some of the parts on the fringe designs, as they are sewing, they are locking into position our stitches, so that when we come to cutting away our fringe and creating our fringe, we then don't lose our embroidery thread. Okay, so we just have one more center. Says we've got 1 minute, and then we will be right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, so these little valet trays, this one and this one. So the instructions for how to make these and how to step through your cornering, these are also available on the Janome Australia website as a free download project. You can also on the Janome Australia website subscribe to our newsletter, where we do give you free embroidery designs, free projects, and information about our accessories every month. Yeah, we have them every month.
I think there are 3 free designs.
Oh, 3 free designs this month. Wow. All right, so we have finished that embroidery now. So we've got all of our little fringe flowers, our original design, and our word. And you'll notice on here as well, I've got my little magnets. So because I have a finer weight cotton and a larger hoop, I have popped my little magnets, and they just pop on and off. So we just clip them down and take them off, and they just go over these little silver areas. Okay, so I don't need them top and bottom because I've got a fair bit of support here. I've just used them one on either side at the top and the bottom. And then when you remove them, it's just a clip up. So you just lift them up like so and take them off. And then I release the screw. I've got a screw under here. I just gently release that. I don't take it the whole way out, just enough to loosen my inner hoop away from my outer hoop. And I'm going to flip this over, and you can see here all my little fringe flowers. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one here, and I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm just ever so carefully going to trim around the white section only. You can trim into this edge here, and it will trim away the flower. Just looking to see, none of ours have that. So I'm just going to trim through the actual bobbin fill. Okay, so just ever so carefully, and I only do it maybe like 1/8 of an inch at a time. So just quite steady. And you can actually do a few of these into a hooping, and then once you have a few into a hooping, you can come and remove them and take them to a garment or another item you have and stitch them on with a button sewing foot. So you can have them as like freestanding little embellishments. So I'm nearly back to my beginning. I've left my tearaway in place so that there's some stability. Normally I would remove my tearaway, but I didn't want it to go all floppy. Okay, so now I have trimmed away the whole way around my bobbin fill. I lie, I can see one little stitch there. Okay, so I've trimmed away all of my bobbin fill. I'm going to turn my design over and I'll pop it maybe just here for you to see. And I just gently start rubbing at the edges, and you can see there, I'll just do say half of it. You can see there how the little furry fringe parts now lift away from the fabric. Okay, so I just, and you might choose to do this with a stylus or something like that. I don't mind using my nail just gently to lift those up, and they make a gorgeous little 3D part to your embroidery. Okay, now the fringe designs are on a lot of the machines. They will be listed as a fringe design. Your instruction books will also give you the instructions on how to create. So some of them have little border designs, some have flowers, some have little garden beds. Right. All of those kind of things come with the little fringe. So then you just go ahead and turn all of these into little fringe, just like that one. Okay, so I'll trim a second one so that we can see, and I'll try and get it as close to, might do this darker one so you can see. So we take the white section only, which is the bobbin fill. Okay, so the white section only, we trim that away. Now the reason that this isn't falling apart, you can see the purple thread, the darker purple thread here and on this side. So you can see it on the inner and on the outer. Then you can see the lighter color that is our center holding that in place. So as it's stitched, it's actually going along and holding this darker color in place, so that when I come and trim this away, I don't lose my stitches. Okay, so I'm not trimming away and losing anything. It's all staying there. And you can see it releases a little bit as you go. So it kind of relaxes. It doesn't stay taut like as if we've left our bobbin fill there. Now, not every design can you do this. I wouldn't take this and start undoing any of these because they're not designed for fringe. But so they just fall apart? Yeah, they would just fall out. You would just be unpicking effectively. But these ones have been digitized and built into the machine as a funky little flower to add. So the one I've undone before was the 80% one, and this one is 100% one. So if I flip over and just gently rub just around, we create that little fringe. Like that. I enjoy doing this. It's the simple things sometimes. There we go. So that one was the 100. This one was the 80. And this one was the 100. Oh, I was off camera. This one was the 120. Now, another little design that I'll quickly show you with this fringe, or another example, is something like this little bag. So we have made just a little, can go away a little bit, please. So this is just like a little treat bag or a I just put treats in here, that has some piping decorative stitches and has been pieced together. But we've added this little embroidery. Before we constructed it, we've added this little embroidery, which has the fringe. So exactly the same. It was a fringe that it embroidered out as, and then on the back side, we trimmed it away, and that's also given us this little fringe area right along here. Okay. So thank you for attending this afternoon's session. And if you've attended all of our sessions, thank you very much. We have certainly had a great time for our first ever event such as this. And certainly let your local retailers know if you have enjoyed participating and learnt lots of information. Let them know that you've enjoyed it, and then we can organise with them probably some more events like this as well. So on behalf of Janome Australia and myself, thank you very much for attending.